Welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Duff. I'm the librarian here who helped to organize this event. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming, especially our very talented local authors. I'd also like to thank Elizabeth Martinez, our library director, and Maria Roddy, our deputy librarian, for assisting with the event. And also the Friends of the Salinas Public Library, the Writers Circle, and the John Steinbeck Public Library Book Club. And also, of course, Garland Thompson, our wonderful sound and tech. So we're so pleased you could be with us today. The format of our event will be that each author has about 10 minutes to go over their works, background, and what inspires them as authors. It will then be followed with our inaugural Poet Laureate Award, and then also followed by question and answers. We ask that you write any questions you have down. We put a little insert in the program, and we'll collect them on the sides. After this, we'll have some book signing, sales, and light refreshments over in our teen lounge area. And next up, we have Robbie Tripp of our Writers Circle, and he'll explain his group and he'll introduce each author. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. It's good to have you all here. We got quite a group here, so we're excited. Everybody looks great. It's a great day. So my name is Robbie Tripp, as Lisa mentioned. I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah, but I'm currently a Hartnell College student. And I got involved here at the library because I started the Salinas Writers Circle. And this was something that I started because I saw that there's very few opportunities for writers here, and writing is something that I've always enjoyed and had done. And so I had this idea to start just a simple group where people could get together and just share writings that they've written in the past, things they're working on, work on new writing. We do prompts and things like that. And then we take away little homework assignments, I guess you say, that we can do during the week just to improve our writing skills. So that's been something I've had a really fun time getting involved with. And the whole thing was kind of based on the premise. There's a quote that I found that I really liked from author Louis L'Amour. And he once said, quote, "If you're going to be a writer, the first essential is to just write. Do not wait for an idea. Start writing something and the ideas will come. You have to turn on the faucet before the water starts to flow." End quote. So I really like that a lot, and that's just kind of what we do. And so the information on that can be found. There's a flyer by the desk over there, and you can find my information on it. We meet every Tuesday at 6:45, and yeah, we'd love to see anybody out. But enough about me. So without further ado, I'd like to announce the authors. And we're just really excited to have everybody here. Each of these 8 authors are from the Monterey or Salinas area or are currently living here, and they've each enjoyed tremendous success with their books and their writings, and we're very lucky to have them here to grace us with their presence. So before I announce everybody, I would like to share one last quote that I really liked. It's one of my favorite quotes dealing with authors. It's from journalist Russell Baker, and he once said, quote, "The only thing I was fit for was to be a writer, and this notion rested solely on my suspicion that I would never be fit for real work, and that writing didn't require any." So I don't want to offend any of the writers, but maybe they're here because they couldn't do anything else. I don't know. No, I'm just joking. Okay, so we'll start off with Henry Iseman, and I will read his bio, and then the floor will be turned to him to present his writings and his life. Henry Iseman was born in Salinas in 1930, just 6 doors down from the Steinbeck house. His father was a roofer and his mother worked at a lettuce shed. He attended Roosevelt School from kindergarten through 6th grade, went to Washington Junior High School, and then on to Salinas High School. Mr. Iseman then spent 2 years at his hometown Hartnell College, after which he attended San Jose State College, receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology with minors in anthropology and psychology. While at San Jose, he met his future wife, Mary Ellen, who I met over there, beautiful woman, very nice, who, like him, was an international folk dancer. They had been married for over 58 years and are still dancing. Impressive. They are both retired. Yes, they are both retired teachers. They have 2 children, Lisa Iseman Gunter and Mark Iseman from Templeton, California. They have been and are still closely involved with their 5 adult grandchildren. After his retirement, Henry embarked on book tours all over California, Canada, and Hawaii, and even the old Soviet Union. Henry has taught creative writing for adults and children at both Hartnell College and Cuesta College? Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo. Sorry, Utah problems. He now lives in Cayucos, California, tending his show gardens and being an innkeeper. Henry.
Good. Such an introduction. Are you able to hear me all right?
No, everybody.
Not this one. Okay. Now I've got it. I'm glad to be back in the Steinbeck Library. I have fond memories of several presentations I made back there in the children's section. I'm especially glad to be here today in the company of all these prolific authors. That's really a wonder to see in Salinas. As soon as I saw it, I liked the topic for today's meeting. What inspired you? For over 10 years, I had dozens of book tours and made hundreds of presentations to children and adults. Inevitably, during the question period, someone would ask, where do you get your ideas? I told them then, as I tell you now, I never have to look for ideas. Ideas find me. I get them from my reading, newspaper articles, a provocative picture, and TV news stories, my travels, and my family. I get stories of ideas about people, history, nature, and of course, animals. Here are a few of the ideas that moved me to write. In 1985, a humpback whale did something no other whale had ever done before. He left the Pacific, swam under the Golden Gate Bridge, and into the Sacramento River. That humpback whale just made the world his imagination, and he was every day in the TV news and in the newspapers. I wrote the story, Humphrey the Wrong Way Whale, which is now in its 5th printing. Quite a few years ago, and for me now everything is quite a few years ago, I wrote an article for the Salinas Californian about my mother called Mom Was a Cop, which Lisa remembered when she was doing research right here in this library about the history of the Salinas Police Department, and that became her book, The First Policewoman. I wrote about my father and a very famous Salinas writer. I called it Dutch and Mr. Steinbeck. To my astonishment, it won first prize in the Monterey Bay Independent Booksellers Writing Contest, and it was published in the newspaper. I don't have much time to write right now, but when I do, I will sit down and write. So I say to you, get inspired. Look around you. Find something that interests you and you want to share with others, and write. I'll close with a story that happened to me right here in Salinas. Each day I take my morning walk just about dawn. I often walk down South Romy Lane around the mausoleum to Abbott Street. One day I had just passed around the corner when there was some commotion, and I looked behind me. A big black bear was following me.
Oh my God.
Police cars screeched to a halt. It startled the bear, and he jumped over a high wrought iron fence and crashed through the window of the store. A policeman with his hand on his holster charged towards me, and he said, "Sir, get out of the way." I stepped off the curb where all the cars were stopped. One of the windows rolled down, and a woman pointed at me, and she said, "That bear was following you." Calmly I said, "Yes, it was." And I headed for home to watch the action on KSBW. That night, I watched the TV news about the rescue of the bear. Before going to bed that night, I wrote down my story for myself and to share with my grandchildren. I ended that story with this line: I know I will never again take my morning walk with a bear behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry. That was captivating. Okay, next we have Lisa Iseman, which is actually Henry's daughter, so keeping it in the family. Murder is serious business, and Lisa Iseman's interest in this history is genetic. Her grandmother was the first policewoman I have here in Salinas, but I was talking to Mary Ellen earlier, and she said first, as far as they know, the first policewoman in the state of California. So pretty amazing. During a time of growth and turbulence. Lisa was licensed as a private investigator in 1995 and encouraged by the Salinas PD in their interest in a historical yearbook. Was able to research and write a book not only about May Iseman, but one which included all the characters of the Salinas Police Department from the time it was authorized in 1903. The first policewoman, A History of the Salinas Police Department, is a history of the Salinas PD and her grandmother's role in it. The success of her first book prompted her to continue the research, which has resulted in an ongoing series of murder, Salinas-style books. These murder stories are fascinating accounts of actual cases, many of which are still unresolved. Ooh. Escape from Soledad Prison, Lisa's latest book, which is now available, will go into detail about the history of the old prison, the men and women who worked there, and will include stories about the architecture, inmates, prison agricultural program, and the wardens. Lisa Iseman is married to retired homicide detective and current mayor Joe Gunter, whom she met while investigating a murder for the defense. Both are experts in crime scene processing and gangs, and now work together as Iseman and Gunter Investigations. The two continue to live in Salinas with their daughter Taryn, who plans to become a police officer and hopes to work on a K-9 unit someday. Iseman also owns the Salinas School of Dance, where she teaches ballet, tap, jazz, and Irish dancing to hundreds of students each week. As the director of the Spirit of Salinas Irish Dancers, she and her team have traveled to Ireland to compete in a world-level competition. I'd like to ask Lisa to please stand and speak now. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? No. Do I need to go over there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
You should be able now.
I started life as someone who only wanted to be a police officer. From my youngest memory, that's all I ever wanted to do. When I went to college, I studied criminology, and I did receive all of my degree and training was in law enforcement. But I had been a ballet dancer for many years, and I was very small and thin. And when I went to take the police athletic test, I failed, and my life was over. Even though I had scored the highest score on the written test, I couldn't get over the wall, I couldn't make the arrest simulator work, and my parents said, "Get a job." So my dance teacher at the time was in his 70s, he was ready to retire, and he said, "Would you take over the dance studio?" And I said yes, thinking I'd do it for 2 years, I'd beef up, and then I'd go back to the police department testing. It's kind of ironic that I turned out to be really good at being a dance teacher, and 2 of my students are here today. Thank you for coming. And I kept doing it, but I never got over wanting to be a police officer. Although I was never able to become an actual law enforcement officer, I did become a private investigator about 30 years ago and opened my own company in 1995, and I still, with my husband Joe, we run the Iseman and Gunter Investigations. In 2003, we had a new police chief. Dan Ortega came to town knowing virtually nothing about Salinas, and he wanted to know what the history of the department he was running was. And he was talking about it when I said, "Oh, my grandmother was the first female police officer, I'll help you do it." thinking it would take me maybe a couple weeks to research and write a term paper and turn it in and it would all be done. It took 2 years, and they had to hire help for me to do the research in order to get it all done. I spent hundreds of hours in this library, both with the historical collection that they have that their reference librarians keep and with the microfiche. And after 2 years of research and gathering and probably, I don't know, 100,000 pieces of paper, because I made copies of everything, I sat down to write the book for the police department. It is the complete history of the police department from before Salinas had a police department to the point where they had a night watchman to where they hired the first police chief. And it is a very fascinating story. During that time, the police department published that book as a yearbook with pictures of all the undercover police officers, so it could not be distributed widely. So I published my own version of the book without those pictures so it could be made available to the community because it is such a historical document itself. And it only contained little snippets of stories. And those stories were really interesting, but I didn't have the time or ability to go into detail with those stories. So after that book came out, I decided to go back and find those stories that had been really interesting and go into more detail with them. And that's where the second book came. Knowing that Salinas had been violent from the 1800s, I knew that it wasn't just gangs that were the reason why we're a violent city. And so the first Murder Salinas style book that I wrote had no gang-related murders in it. It was all just, if you will, generic husbands killing wives, fathers killing children, mothers killing husbands. It was the first book is just full of that. And it shows that Salinas has a long history of violence that is not even gang-related. When I recovered from that, and my husband will tell you every time I write a book I gain 15 pounds. So when I recovered from the second book, I decided that I would write about the gang murders because I was an expert in gangs, as my husband is. And I had done many, many murder cases and thought I would go back and pick out some of them that showed not only the spread of gang violence over the city, but also the birth of the Nuestra Familia and why we have this problem with the gangs in Salinas. So Murder Salinas Style Book 2 tells the story of the birth of the Nuestra Familia here, the big gang problems that we have. And my husband was a homicide detective at the time those cases came out, so I had good information coming from him. And again, the library has extensive historical files and access to the old newspapers, which is very helpful. There were also still attorneys and everything that had that information. I am curious. I see one line in an article or something, and it piques my interest, and that's where I get my inspiration from. I have to know what happens at the end. I can't just read one line and be happy with that. I want to know why it happened, where it happened, who was involved, and the whole story. So to me, I think that's part of being a private investigator. I'm Snoopy. I want to know what happened and who did it and why, and so this is the reason I kept writing the books. That came into play once I recovered from the third book. I was doing research for a neighborhood newspaper that I write every month for Maple Park, and I came across one line in one of the historical documents here that said that a young Monterey County sheriff had been murdered here in Salinas. And I thought, well, I never heard that before. Who is it? What happened? So I spent another year researching that, and Murder Salinas Style Book 3, He Shot the Sheriff is the story of what happened a long time ago when a young, popular, handsome sheriff was murdered by someone he knew, and what the reaction of the city was for that. Then I volunteered to help the Soledad prison write their history because I can't say no to these research projects. And once again, the research librarian here and the historians, they have really great records here. And my dad had told me when I was a little girl about my grandmother, which was, I think, why I wanted to be a police officer, but wasn't able to do that, so I was going through these other paths. He had also told me about an escape from Soledad prison when he worked there for a very short time before he decided to be a teacher. And I went back and researched that, and that's the book that just came out. So I get my inspiration from curiosity, from stories, and also from listening to people who talk about Salinas in a negative way. And I want people to have the whole story available to them before they make their decision on what they say about this city. We do have our problems, but there's an awful lot of good people here, and you can see that in the stories. Even though the stories are basically about bad things that happen, within those stories are the stories of the people who brought it to the attention of police, or turned in the person who did it, who assisted the community in some way, and are still to this day trying to improve our image. And with a husband from law enforcement and the connections with the police department, I feel it has been a privilege for me to be able to write about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was great. I can't imagine the undertaking of compiling that much information and putting it into a book, so definitely has my respect. Next we have Elizabeth Murray. And Elizabeth definitely probably has the most international experience, I think, out of our authors here. Elizabeth Murray is an author, artist, and keynote speaker. Her passion for nature and appreciation of beauty inspired her involvement in diverse projects around the world, from Monet's gardens in Giverny, France, to remote African villages, to the Amazon rainforest, to Japan. Miss Murray is perhaps best known for her work helping to restore Monet's gardens and photographing them for 25 years. Her photos have traveled with Monet's paintings to 8 museums, are published annually in calendars, and the award-winning Monet's Passion: Ideas, Inspiration, and Insights from the Painter's Gardens. Elizabeth completely rewrote Monet's Passion for its 20th anniversary edition. In 2012, 370,000 people attended her photography show on Monet's Gardens at New York's Botanical Gardens. Miss Murray is finishing her new book titled Living Life in Full Bloom: Daily Practices to Deepen Passion, Creativity, and Relationships. The book will be out in January of 2014. Elizabeth.
Thank you for coming. It's a big deal to come inside on a beautiful day. But this is inspiration. I don't know if you know the key where inspiration comes from, but it means breathing. It means when we breathe in. And what inspires me the most is beauty. And so I fell in love a lot. I fell in love with one of the panelists brought these beautiful irises from her garden, and then somebody brought roses. So the beauty of nature, and here we live in such beauty. And so all kinds of creativity. I love to garden, I love to be in nature, and I take photographs, and I just brought some photographs with me to show you of, this is Big Sur, the beauty of that area, Monet's garden. So as I'm a painter as well, and since I was a little kid, I like to write, but I'm actually a really bad speller. Are any of you bad spellers? Are there any dyslexics in the group? It has been a challenge for me, but it's something I love so much that I'm willing to go beyond that. And I love storytelling and how to tell a story. And so painting and traveling is something I love as well. So I had a group of 9 gardeners here in Monterey that worked for me. And we did a lot of the fancy gardens. And I got into horticultural therapy, but I ended up going to France and being able to be a gardener here. And from that, I ended up writing about it. I've written journals. Are any of you journal writers? I have written journals since I was about 10 years old, and sometimes it's only a few lines, and sometimes it's my best companion. I think that the blank page is like a mirror that shows you the inside of your heart. And you don't really sometimes know what you look like today. So you look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I need to comb my hair. And sometimes you don't know what's really going on in your heart. You kind of feel confused or emotional. but going to the white page can help you express yourself. And I actually like to do it sometimes even with my non-dominant hand. I'm right-handed, but I will sometimes write with my left hand, and it will be messy and big, but that can help me generate kind of an inner view of what I'm feeling. Going and working here was a dream, and I quit my job and I worked there for free, and what it opened up for me was time to photograph and write, and welcome to return there now for going on 30 years. These are some of my other friends' gardens that I photographed. I got to know some of the best gardeners in France over the years. Another thing that I really love is I love nature, all kinds of nature. And so recently I got to return to the Amazon a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. And this is a little kitty cat. I like photography. I mean, photography and photographing gardens are part of what inspires me. Getting up really early in the morning and seeing beauty, seeing the sparkle of the light, following the light. You know, it's like following a little cat in the garden. It's like following what you have interest with. This is my friend's house in France, but that was at dawn. So recently I went back. I just will tell you a little bit about the Amazon. It's a place that I really love because the nature is so vibrant, and the place I go to, there hasn't been any tree cutting, and the trees are considered sacred there. And when I started to go, I asked the people, how can I help you? They are a dream culture. They wake up at dawn in the morning and tell their family their dreams, and that's how they plan their day. And they said, well, we'd like to write our language down. So we made a team of some indigenous native Oshawa people and some elders and myself and 2 Ecuadorian young women. And we ended up making the first book in their language. And it's a trilingual book. It's in Oshawa, Spanish, and English. And I went down and brought down 60 pounds of art supplies and taught the kids how to paint. So in this book are the illustrations. And I will be, if you'd like to give a small donation to the library here, you can take one of these books home. They have about, 25 or 30. And I just ask you to give a donation and you can take it home. And I brought my notebook. I just recently got to go back to the jungle and go back to the Galapagos Islands. So deep nature, this little notebook fell in the water 3 times. It got soaking wet. But I love to write, and I think as a writer, whatever the little notebook is or scrap of paper, I write all the time. If I don't have a pen, I just feel like something's wrong. And Thursday I was in a church, a friend of mine's dad died, I was at the funeral, and the funeral was so beautiful, and what they said about everybody was so lovely. I didn't have my notebook, and I go, oh my God. So I got the little envelopes that you give donations, those little pencils. I was writing down notes, because what they were saying about this man is so precious. So I suggest always have a notebook. And I also like to make little sketches, and these are little sketches of watercolors. And in Galapagos, they have turtles. They have blue-footed boobies, which are great. Those are great. And the tortoises, and sometimes the tortoises are 100, 150 years old. And being able to see them and draw them, or draw the lizards from life, it was just a great joy. So inspiration for me comes from beauty, from nature, from listening to within, to spend time in silence, sometimes doing walking, spending time in my inner voice, listening to it and letting my inner voice express itself through just like journal writing, when you don't even know what you're going to say because you don't know what's going to come out. It's like respecting that inner part. So, and my new favorite camera, which you saw some pictures, is this, my little iPhone. And some of the early pictures here that I was just showing, they're all from the iconography. So it's some early teaching. So thank you. I have a lot more to say, but yes.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And we're now going to have all the authors come to the podium just because the wireless mics aren't giving us quite the projection that we need. So, the next author that we have is Kelly Parra. Is it Parra or Para? Parra, okay. Kelly Parra is a California writer and author of multicultural teen and adult fiction. Her young adult novels, Graffiti Girl, published by MTV Gallery Books in 2007, and Invisible Touch in 2008, are included in the California High School Reading List by the California Readers Organization. Her novel Graffiti Girl was included in the National Book Foundation's Book Up NYC program, encouraging middle grade students to read. Her works have been nominated for honors such as Latino Young Adult Novel Top Pick by Latina Dad, Best Young Adult for Romance Writers of America, and the Tomas Rivera Mexican American Children's Book Award. Kelly's teen works are known for including familiar aspects of her California community and invoking positive messages young readers can relate to. Her books have been featured in newspapers such as the Salinas Californian, Monterey Herald, and the Monterey Bay Inc., as well as several online literary websites. Criminal Instinct, Kelly's debut into adult fiction, was a launch title with Carina Press in 2010. She is currently writing a teen supernatural short fiction series with Buzz Books. Kelly?